Good morning and welcome to The Blueprint. I'm your host, Michael Della Vella. Today's podcast, I've got an incredible guest. The format will be a little different. It was originally shot as a vodcast. It's a very ambitious project that Gianni and I are working on for the City of Westlake. So this is part one. But I wanted to turn it into the podcast format just because I think the content is so great, and I love the city, and I am such a huge fan of Mayor Clough. So I'm so glad that he did this. I hope you guys find this as interesting and informative on what an incredible city we have and what an incredible Mayor Clough is. It's a great interview. It's probably part one of more to come, because I have a lot more questions for him, but I think that will be sent out as the entire podcast. So without further ado, my interview with Mayor Dennis Clough. Hope you enjoy. Mayor Clough, I am thrilled that you let me have the opportunity to sit down and talk to you. You know, I've known you since I was 20 years old. This is my first time I met you. And like you, I am the biggest fan of this city. And I thought we would just sit and talk and both come up with what we love about the city, what makes it so incredible, the absolutely amazing job that you have done from 1986 to present. So with saying all that, why don't you tell me how you got into being the mayor of Westlake, or what led you to it?
Well, let me just say a little bit. I come from a very large family. I have 12 brothers and sisters, and my father started his business out here in the city of Westlake in the 70s. And during the summertime, I had the opportunity to work for him, so I got to know a little bit about the city of Westlake, but it was a completely different type of community back then. In fact, most of Dover Center West was still rural farms, grape fields, and they still had horses riding down Hilliard Boulevard. But it was one of those communities that I saw a lot of potential, and I decided this is where I want to live. And I ultimately bought my house in 1979 here, but I actually moved here in 1978. I was renting property up on Center Ridge Road for a little while. But once I decided that this is the place I wanted to live, I felt, why not give back to the community? Let me get involved in the community. Let me see what it's all about. So I started to actually attend council meetings and planning commission meetings, and saw what was lacking and what was needed in the city of Westlake. But I also saw the great potential that this community had. And ultimately, after attending council meetings for 2 years, I decided that maybe I can run for city council and help out a little bit of the west side of the community. When I say west side, normally you don't divide a community, but most of the development in Westlake in the beginning had been east of Dover Center. West of Dover Center is where we had still a lot of the farms. Mm-hmm. In fact, Crocker Park, now we talk about Crocker Park, that was a farm, and many other properties west of Dover. But that's where I bought my house, on Bradley Road.
On Bradley Road.
Bradley Road. There were no sanitary sewers there. We still had septic tanks. There were no sidewalks over there. But it was a beautiful tree-wooded street. And I bought a 900 square foot ranch, and I started to raise my family there. But at that time, in 1981,
okay.
Like I said, I moved in 78. In 1981, I ran for city council. And I ran against a couple of people, and in the end, I ended up winning by 3 votes.
And how long so from 79, you're on council. Were you that involved until 1986 with the city?
I was involved, actually. Again, I ran for city council in 1981.
1981.
I served as a councilman in 1982, 1983, and then I decided to leave my father's home improvement business. That's what the type of business that he had. and I went to work for the federal government. And they had a law that basically said you could not engage in partisan politics and still work for the federal government. So I ran for school board. I couldn't run for city council again, even though I had been elected. So I ran for school board, and in the middle of a 4-year term on the school board, the position of mayor came open. I let my federal government know that I was going to leave them because I had to leave before I could even run. So I turned in my resignation and I started running for mayor of the city of Westlake, and that's sort of how it began. And that was 1985.
That was 1985.
That was 85. So 2 years on the school board, 2 years on the city council, and now I'm in my 38th year as mayor.
Amazing. So I know I've told you this story, but I'm going to tell it for camera. When I met you, and I didn't know you, and it was you were running for mayor, what Mayor Clough did, which made an amazing impression on a 19-year-old kid at the time, was he was going door to door, knocking on doors, introducing yourself, telling them that you're running for mayor and here's what I stand for. Here's the crazy part. We had a Bush for Mayor sign in our yard. And he came up to the door, I answered it, and he says, I know you're running for Bush, but it's your family home. Everybody came, listened to him, and he went on. But that was just, to me, it was amazing that you just knocked door to door, didn't care who people's signs were, introduced yourself, and again, made an amazing impression on me. How many doors did you knock on then?
When I was running for mayor, I covered the city twice.
Wow.
I went around and knocked on every door in the city before the primary, and then I went again between the primary and the general election. It was a way to introduce myself because, as I pointed out, I hadn't been a longtime Westlake resident. And actually, when I got involved in politics, many of the seasoned people here said, you can't get elected, you don't belong to the right groups, you don't have the right network, you don't belong to the right church. And that sort of surprised me. And I said, well, I'm going to serve everybody in the city of Westlake, and the best way to find out what's needed is to go door to door and talk to people.
But incredible. It's so old school that you did that. And again, people don't do that today. But that was like typical of if you're running for politics, get out and get your name out there. It's amazing, but incredible that you did that. Did you ever have to do that after that time and when you were running for re-election?
I still do it.
You still
Even
do it.
when I have to get signatures to get my name on the ballot, I personally go door to door. Some people stand outside of the rec center or go to an event. I prefer to go door to door and talk to people because it's another way in which I understand the needs of this community or the wants of this community. And then I also get to hear whether they think I'm doing a good job or I need to improve. And I don't think you can ever stop learning. And the way the city of Westlake has continued to grow, we've reached a pretty good pinnacle at this point in time, but there's still always room for improvement. And the best way to find out what might still need to be addressed or improved is to talk to the people that you serve. And I enjoy this community. I love this community. That's why I got involved. And it wasn't being involved in politics. It was being involved in serving and giving back to the community. And even though my education is in business, I use that education to manage the taxpayers' dollars in the city of Westlake. And it's one of the keys to the reason why we're financially stable and have been ever since I've gotten involved in the community. And we want to keep it that way. We have the opportunity to keep our taxes real low because we've created an environment that not only do we want do we have residents wanting to move into the city of Westlake. We have businesses that want to move into the city of Westlake. And now we have lots of retail establishments in the city of Westlake that none of that was present. None of that was present in the 70s and the 80s. In fact, the residents of the city of Westlake wanted control as to what type of shopping facility would be in the city of Westlake. They had a vote to approve Crocker Park.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yep. Crocker Park would never have happened if it wasn't for the people supporting it. But then, as public office holders, we had to support it. And we didn't always support every type of development that was asking to move into the city of Westlake. We turned certain types of development down because we didn't feel it was the right location or it was the right type of business or retail establishment that would continue to make Westlake an attractive community.
Well, I will tell you, from somebody who works and his office is on Crocker Park, it always was a concern for people that, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. It's going to be a mess. I'm not saying what today because the resurfacing of the roads, it happens and it delays traffic. But the way the city planning was to dress Crocker Park up with the boulevards, the trees, the turning lanes, the thought that went into that, it worked, and it's just amazing going up and down that street. It's like a mecca of entertainment, of retail, of dining. And it's beautiful. It's lit up. It's, especially when you go down now and you see all the trees, and as they get bigger, you have to have a lot of pride in at least that it's turned out that way. Did you always envision it to be that way, or did it just morph into something that...
It exceeded my expectations, and I think most of the city's residents, it exceeded their expectations.
I agree with you.
We had the opportunity to see what Hilliard Boulevard was when we put trees and flower boxes there, and that was an idea that came from residents. Let's dress up Hilliard Boulevard. Let's make it really an attractive street. And it was always going to be residential. And then when Crocker Park came in, we said, well, why don't we just continue it? And that's the reason why we have the trees on Crocker Park. But one thing different that many other cities forget about, when you've got a development as large as Crocker Park, you need to be addressing the traffic patterns prior to them opening. Otherwise, you are going to have a mess, and you can see that in different cities.
Oh, absolutely.
We had an engineering firm take a look at the impact of Crocker Park and what would be needed. That's why we widened Crocker Road the way we did, and of course we wanted it to be more attractive. We don't have telephone lines down there. We don't have electric lines down there. They're all buried. They're all buried. They're not overhead.
You brought this up, and it's one of my favorite areas of the city, and it's very original, and I'll call it Old Westlake, is Hilliard Boulevard. And again, the trees that are in the middle, the planters boxes that you mentioned, I have tried to get in there for, 15 years, but it really does. This time of year, it's so quaint, and it just is so attractive driving by. It looks beautiful. I love when we have the flags all above the city, and especially this time of the year, what is one of my favorite times is we're not too far off from the parade, which, again, we have attended forever, the 4th of July parade that we have every year going down Hilliard. And it's just like a neat city thing, and I know probably every city does things like that, but it just seems like every year there's a lot of attention that goes into that, and it's just great civic pride, and it's well attended, and I love that you guys are involved in that and do that. So we
reestablished that during the first year of me being mayor, because it just happened to be the celebration of our 175th anniversary.
I didn't know that.
Since Dover was founded. And we reinstituted the July 4th parade, and then we decided we were going to continue it after that. And we've built upon it, and it is city run. So we put the extra effort into it. But you're right. It's one of those
It's
things that brings the entire
does.
community out.
It
And they
does. I mean,
love to
my
see
kids and I and my wife, they've been on cars and they've marched in it, and it's just it's old school, and it's just a great weekend. The other thing I want to ask you is, I've always wanted to know, your city fireworks are second to none. They are spectacular, and I don't know if you ever get to see other city fireworks or other displays. What goes into the planning of that display?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is we wanted it to be the best around that we could.
Unbelievable.
And we went to city council because we don't have sponsors for that. It's the taxpayers that pay for that. But we've heard so much great feedback from it that we up it every single year, a little bit more.
It always seems that way.
Yeah, we purposely do that, and we say this is the way that the city itself is giving back to the community, because it's all about family, it's all about our independence, it's all about celebrating what we are. And Westlake has turned into be one heck of a fantastic community.
I mean, I have been going there since I was a kid, and we would have the parade. As a kid, when we were in bikes, and I was telling you about the moped stories, we would be there all day. And I have seen those fireworks from the same spot 30 years that we don't miss it. And we always have friends that will come in from other cities and watch the fireworks there, and they rave like, I just can't believe this is a city fireworks display. This is absolutely incredible. It's just amazing. So,
well, we got good participation, and we always get, if we get good feedback like you're giving me right now, we want to continue to make sure that it's better than what it was the year before.
do you use the same company year after year, or is it an outside
Over
company?
the years, we've had a couple of different companies, but we've been settled in on the one for probably the last 15 years.
And I also love that, you get that many people, and there's no problems. It just goes off peacefully, and everybody has a nice time, and they go home and no problems.
The entire city departments are involved, from the recreation to the police to the fire to the service department, to make sure that everybody has a safe 4th of July, as well as one that they can remember.
Again, thank you. It's an incredible day, and again, you have so many compliments from people not in your city that say this is just spectacular. And while we're on the subject of spectacular, one of my favorite parts of the city is Clegg Park. I am so fond of it because I grew up there as a child, going to old Clegg Park pool, Peterson Pool. Am I correct?
Peterson Pool.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you will remember the old rocket that was like iconic in the playground there, that every kid always wanted to play in the rocket.
I remember it
the
well.
rocket
In
slide.
fact, I can tell you where it is.
Where is it?
It's in Spencer, Ohio.
Is it really?
Yes.
Did somebody refurbish it?
They refurbished it and put it in Spencer, Ohio. If you go down 301, you'll be able to see it.
Wow, unbelievable. So tell me about, like, what was the vision to redo that unbelievable place? And now it's better than a 5-star resort water park. It's unbelievable, and I didn't get to see that when it opened. Gianni and I actually went there last year, and that was my first experience of it. My wife and I spent a Saturday and Sunday, and we're just floored, absolutely floored, what that place is like now.
Well, we had the support of the community to go forward and build that. When we were actually able to renew our recreational levy, and this is something that we've done here, and this is where my accounting background comes into play. We've taken our income tax, which is still rather low at 1.5%, but we've designated 1/8 of 1% strictly for recreation. Mm-hmm. And once we were able to build the rec center, we wanted to continue to put money into recreation for the other areas. So we have a separate designated fund for that, and that's what allowed us to build this beautiful aquatic center that I would say it is second to none
Second
right
to none.
now. I don't know of anyone that's has a better one. And it was well planned out. We actually hired the top designers in the industry for something like that. And we wanted to make it the best of the best. And that's sort of what we've been doing with all the improvements that we've made over the years. I mean, the city hall, the new service garage, the even at the time the fire and the police station that were built in '91, they were the top of the line at that time, or the best of the best.
But they still are. When you drive by these places, you come into this city hall, it's immaculate. It's from the inside to the outside. It just seems like everything is so well taken care of. The other thing that I've always noticed, and maybe I'm nuts here, if you see our fire trucks, they always look brand new. The police cars look brand new. Everything always looks pristine. Is that something that just each individual fire department, they just take care of them that well, or it just looks like nothing is ever run down? The garbage trucks are never run down. And I don't know if people pay attention to it. It's something that I do, and I'm like, my gosh, are we that wealthy of a city that everything is like pristine and brand new? Or
Well, I'd like to say that I take a little bit of credit for that, because I've always believed in properly maintaining anything that we own. Whether it's a fire truck or a police vehicle or the parks, I want to always maintain it, because if you let it go, it ends up costing you more money when you ultimately have to replace it. So annual or regularly scheduled maintenance goes a long way in preserving the assets that we have in this community. And we tell the police department, the fire department, and obviously our service department that this is what we want to make sure that we continue to do, not only to, quote, protect the taxpayers' money, but also show that we take pride in our community and in our equipment and in the services that we provide. When you mention Hilliard Boulevard, that street shows the pride that this community has. When you say you see people coming in from other communities, that's one of the first things they talk about. What a beautiful street.
it's gorgeous. It is just beautiful.
And it shows that people have pride in this community. And that's why we started Westlake in Bloom. We did not realize that it was going to take off as much as it did. But people plant flowers and gardens in their own yard to basically show that they have pride in this community.
I'm gonna tell you, this is kind of funny. When I list homes in Westlake, one of the first things they'll tell me is we are a Westlake in Bloom winner, and they'll we have all the photos. Again, they love that, but I think it's great. And some of these gardens that people have will blow you. I mean, you've seen them. They're just it's amazing. But again, all that civic pride, again, it does come from having a wonderful city that takes pride in itself, and again, everybody here, you don't see anything run down. How are our roads always in fantastic shape? I mean, it just seems like every summer we were talking about, I just thought you just did Dover Center. Dover Center was in good shape. Why did it have to be redone again? Do you budget that every so many years this road is going to be done whether it needs it or not?
Well, they all need it. We don't just put it on if it doesn't. We don't put new asphalt over top of it if it doesn't need it. It starts to show wear and tear.
Is there a cycle?
Yes, we have what we call a 5-year plan, and that was another thing that we instituted as soon as I became the mayor. We did not have a capital plan prior to 1985.
No kidding.
No, we did not. And we put together, here's all the needs of the community, and then we had to find a funding source. And the funding source, some of it came from an increase in the income tax, some of it came from just setting aside income tax for specific purposes. And when I talked about the recreation, we have 0.3% of the income tax that we receive designated for capital items, capital projects. That means the roads, it means the storm sewers, it means the water lines. And we spend that certain dollar amount every single year to make sure that we keep the maintenance low, but yet we address it on a regular basis. And that's why we have good roads. The section of Dover Center, believe it or not, we only did part of Dover Center last year.
Oh, wow. See?
That the center, from Center Ridge to North Olmsted, we didn't do it because the gas company was tearing it up.
Oh, my
So we
goodness.
had to wait until this year to finish it off. But we had done Dover from basically Center Ridge through to Bay Village. But this one section, we've had a couple of bad experiences over the years. Fortunately, they're very few and far between. When we'd do a road and then the water department would come in and tear it up, or the gas company would come in and tear it
Gotcha.
up. So we try to get their schedule, and then we coordinate it with our schedule to make sure that we're not tearing up a road that was just finished. But no, it's important that we maintain roads on a regular basis. And every year in the wintertime, our engineering department with our service department visits every road in the city. And we mark down, is this an A, a B, a C, or a D? And obviously the D's and the C's get the attention right away. And then the A's and the B's, we wait till they become probably a C before we start do it. But we want good roads. We want great infrastructure. It's not something that sometimes people don't always see. You talked about replacing sanitary sewers or storm sewers. People never see that. But the road itself, they do ride on it.
But you go in other cities where their sanitary is in trouble and hasn't been touched in forever in their roads. It makes a difference. And again, not going to name names, but some of their taxes are outrageous. And I would be thinking, what are they paying for? That none of this is done constantly. So, my hat's off to you. Is this city runs unbelievably, and right down through. I have got to know over the years. I've met a lot of people from the engineering department, the service department, all class acts, and everybody's so helpful. And I mean, everybody that I had I got to know people when I was in the building business. And is the building boom in Westlake, has it slowed down from when were the heydays?
The heyday for the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, that's when it was really growing.
What were you getting
real
permits?
fast.
Do you even have a ballpark?
Well, I was informed that we were building 450 homes a year, 500 homes a year. Now, oftentimes it was difficult to stay up with
Sure.
those many homes, but we sort of redid the building department, and we put some brakes on it so it wasn't growing quite as fast, so that we could manage it. I've always believed in a community's ability to grow, but I also believe we need to try to control the growth so it doesn't get out of hand. So we're not opening Crocker Park without having addressed the traffic issues that are going to result from it. So there's a lot of planning before anything comes into reality in the city of Westlake. For any type of development, we go through an extensive review to make sure the impact that development is going to have on the city of Westlake is looked at ahead of time before we would allow. There's a lot of engineering studies done with the traffic impact before a new retail establishment can open.
It shows.
And the
It
residential homes, we want to make sure the sanitary sewers are done right and the storm sewers are done right so that they last. But yes, there's a lot of oversight now. There wasn't quite as much oversight when it was growing so fast. So
Are we under
sort of slow it
200
down.
now? About under 200
Yeah,
permits? a year?
we're this last year, I think we had 115, 120 houses, but that's still pretty good.
It's
for a
really
community
good
like
compared to a lot of cities, but boy, if we were up to 400 now, the housing crisis would be over.
I don't know.
I mean, at least in Westlake it would be. At least in Westlake it would be. So that concludes my interview with Mayor Dennis Clough. What I'm going to call part one. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed speaking with Mayor Clough. Take care, and may the market be with you.
Order up that beat just like it's takeout. Show me you got soul inside those new shoes.